they can't go on just to ride it away. Stay any longer, we will surely never get away. Anything you want, we can make it happen. Stand up and turn around, never let them shoot us down. Never.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Hanshi John, and I am welcoming you to Ring Talk. And my guest today is world champion in Taekwondo, world champion in kickboxing. It is Darrell Henegan. Darrell, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What a career you've had, my friend. What a career. So let's educate our friends and talk to them about all the great things that you've done and that you've contributed to the martial arts.
Okay.
As we start, you started martial arts a long, long time ago,
74.
in 74. Do you remember your first class?
I remember the essence of the first, that time. You know what I mean? When you're, you're first going into the school. And actually, I wasn't a part of the class when I first started. When I started getting introduced to it, I was in judo, and I started in Shotokan karate.
Okay.
So I had, a little bit of interest in martial arts at that time, and a friend of mine was doing Taekwondo, and I used to go and watch his class when I was finished, and we'd go bike home together after that. And I wasn't, it was interesting, but not enough that it didn't captivate me really. I just thought it was, and I was from New York, and that time, I was 11, 12, and everything to me was funny. So I would make fun of them, and it wasn't, it wasn't really what I thought it should be. It didn't captivate me. And then around that time, you had, wrestling. What is it?
WWE, I think, or something.
E or F or something.
F.
WWF, and you had Edward Caponche, and.
Yes.
And I wasn't a wrestling fan. I just liked the flipping that he did. So, at that time with the Bruce Lee movies and the martial arts movies and the sensationalizing of martial arts, that's kind of what I thought you should see and do. And when I started judo, I was getting actually pretty good. It was the second art I tried. And I subsequently the school that my friend was training at, the teachers sold to another teacher, and he came in, and he'd always kick me out because I'd be laughing at them. So,
That's cool. I like that.
I eventually went to see a Taekwondo demonstration at it used to be the Eatons and Simpsons, and when it was that time
on St. Catherine.
On St. Catherine, that's right. And I saw a demonstration, and that got me right away. So.
That's good. And so this was with the Chung Lee group.
It was with Ray Nickel.
Ray
Nickel and Stan and a guy named Ron Velders and Prue. I think his name was Claude Prue, something like that.
And Ray has been a major factor in your career. We're going to come back to Ray in a minute.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, to me, being from Ottawa and being in martial arts for about 60 years now, I remember in the 60s and early 70s that you would name a city and you could tell which martial arts school was the best. It was open tournament then. It was open.
Right.
And yes. Ottawa, you would say L'Angelier Karate School.
Right.
They were excellent. They great fighters, tough guys. Montreal, and there was other good schools in Ottawa, but Montreal, Chung Lee was the man to bring the top guys. Ray Nickel was one of them. Dan Richer, oh my Lord.
He's the first superstar in Taekwondo.
Yes.
I mean, in martial arts even.
Well, he was. And he was, for me, he was a guy that was so fast.
Right.
And had so much timing and everything else. And then Toronto was another group and everything else. Now, let's talk about your development.
But he also had a good outside presence.
Yes.
When you look back on, martial artists at the time that kind of carried the mantle of what martial artists should represent. He was a very good example of that. Other fighters too, but he was the main focus. And like you said, a lot of the supporting fighters. Even if they didn't win, they were still tough as nails.
Yes, yes.
So
Yes, they were. And you know, when Dan Richer was on top of the world as the top fighter, he had competition. You know, there
Right.
was guys in Ottawa and Toronto, you know,
And
and
the
Montreal and the States.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody was gunning for this guy.
Right.
You know, like he was the Bill Wallace of Canada.
That's right.
Think about that, you
He
know.
was.
And
He
we
was.
know Superfoot as personal friends.
yeah,
And
and they actually met.
yes,
They fought twice.
they fought twice,
Yeah.
and they fought in Toronto in
Yeah.
kickboxing. I was at that fight,
Yeah.
and Gary Legacy was the referee.
Was he?
Yeah,
I was at that fight too. I was
Boy.
all of 14 years old.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I know, and it because of people like that and people like you,
Mm.
martial arts has taken a new meaning and has taken a new direction in life.
Right.
You eventually won the world title in Taekwondo.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, okay, so again, back to that story when I actually started Taekwondo, I never paid to go to Taekwondo. I never paid for a uniform. I never paid for. I only had the stipulation that I go to all the classes and I go to all the competitions and I do what my instructor Ray would tell me to do. I started to get pretty good at that, and I'm just going to lead up to that part. And I was about a green belt, and you remember a great fighter named Mike Warren,
Yes, of course.
one of the premier fighters of his time also. And he was a guest to come out of our school, and I think I was a green belt at that time. And at this time, you know, most martial artists in schools have a inert sense of not elitism, but an inert sense of pride in themselves, which can sometimes carry over to egos, and boastful.
But
you know,
and we're young.
and we're and
you know?
that generation was the first generation, so
Yes.
everything there was done to the max.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Their training was done to their max. The emphasis on brotherhood was done to the max. Their rivalries were all done to the max. So, you know, they were the example, and you were the example of what martial arts, the foundation of what martial arts should be. And so we, we as a second generation, and then carrying on. Remember, I just stopped fighting in 2005, so
I know
not that long ago. But so when I started with him and started to become better, I had a chance to spar with Mike Warren, and I was young and impressionable, and it wasn't so much that I got beat up or anything like that. It was I didn't do well, and I didn't like the fact that I didn't do well, and that was the first time I realized I'm never going to be impressed by anybody. I'm never going to let someone else's opinion or someone else's style or capability influence me. And from there I started to really excel, and at that point Ray had it in mind for me that I'm going to be the first world champion in Taekwondo.
And that was your breakthrough day.
That's right.
That was the day.
Pivotal moment
Yes,
where
yes.
something in your life and something in your career makes you go in another direction. And it's an amazing thing because you learn so many things, and I always refer back to growing up and the momentous times that you remember, and I liken them to how your coaching or your mentor or your teacher has a really impactful and dramatic effect on you as a student, which I'm sure he had on many others. And as you're growing and as you're performing and as you're getting better, you learn to appreciate that relationship.
You know what? You were fortunate because you ended up at a good school, and you ended up at a school with a good success story and as a
Right,
group.
right.
But you had a great coach in Ray Nickel.
Right,
And
absolutely.
I remember him in tournaments.
Right.
He was pretty good. He had his brother Stan.
Yeah, Stan, Ray, Stan, the whole group. Ray, Stan, Patrick Montesi, Jean Picard, Daniel Richer, Serge Langlois, Denis Langlois. He had a real class of guys that fought.
when Grandmaster Chung Lee had his school close to the Metropolitain Boulevard in
Right.
Montreal. Friday night was
Yes.
sparring night.
Yeah, that's the-
I would drive down and I would be a spectator
Right.
and I would watch the training that he'd put the guys through. As a
Right.
coach, I've learned by watching him.
Right.
But sometimes my mind would travel faster than anything else because there was so much action.
Right.
You know, and these guys were really good. You saw and you came up watching those guys.
Absolutely, and that's another story too. You know, we learned in the stages of evolution, the preparatory positions that you have to go through, the stages that you must learn and adapt to as you're going, and how to be better than you were yesterday. And not necessarily better than anyone else. It wasn't really necessarily anyone else. It was a question of, how do I get better? You know, how do I be better as a fighter? How do I be better training? How do I be better in my approach to, my success? It's those stories. Like, we go to competition. It was a culture.
Yeah.
We go to competitions. We went to every competition. We in Toronto, in Ontario, in U.S., like New Jersey, New York, and those are some tough guys, like you said. And initially, it was open tournament, and we'd fight a lot of the Kenju Kempo guys and the Kung Fu guys and the karate guys, and it was a learning period. And that's why I said too on the show you had mentioned that initially today we're a brotherhood.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody has learned to respect and appreciate martial arts, not just one style of martial art or another. And as a martial artist, we're a family, and our education has taught us that, in growing up, you leave childish things behind and you realize that we are a family.
And growing up too, if I look at my siblings and when I was a young man going to grade school, and everything has changed,
Right.
but the respect has stayed.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to do, I have friends that I've been friends with for almost 60 years.
Right.
They were in grade school together. And we play poker about 5-6 times a year.
Yeah.
If I'm stuck somewhere, I can call any of them. They'll come and help me out.
Right.
That's the brotherhood.
Right.
But if I play poker, they'll take my
They take
shirt,
your
of
money.
course, because they're
That's the
winners. And they
brotherhood.
like yeah. But that's what it is in martial arts too now.
Right.
You once said something to me. You won. What year did you win the title?
1981 in
81.
Santa Clara, California. It was the first World Games.
And the World Games in those days, you were allowed to punch and kick.
Right.
And then you said it changed. Now it changed maybe for the better,
Well, it like initially because you had a lot of what they call the mixture of martial arts or different styles of martial arts, and we competed together. So the rules kind of had to be, fair for everyone. And so punching to the face or controlled punching to the face, it was a lot that's simulating what maybe sport karate or kickboxing, a flair and flavor of it at that time. And around the course of brown belt, had to be around the late 90s, just the starting of the 80s, because 81 was the World Games, and it was strictly Taekwondo. So we had competed at least a year or two in Taekwondo. So it had to be around 79. That Taekwondo kind of broke off from that and really developed its unique style of fighting that was strictly kicking. And so we punched, of course, but we didn't use the punch as a point tool. I used it as not a point. I just want to put my finger, my face, my hand through his chest.
Yeah.
So, but it worked for me.
Yeah.
It was a part of my fighting style, and I used it, and I gained advantage by using that. So even though we evolved to another system and a style of fighting, I still brought what was advantageous for me to use.
You're still involved in Taekwondo? You teach?
I teach. I was teaching the Royal Military College from 2003 to 2019.
Okay.
And I've taken a little hiatus from them, but I still teach personal training, and I teach Taekwondo, and I teach kickboxing and boxing, physical fitness.
Taekwondo now is an Olympic sport,
Right.
and it's good. I mean, what I see is that I go back in the old school where everybody punch, kick, and everything else, but the speed that they've got and the way that they kick now is, it's not for power now; it's for speed.
Right. I think that, you know, in all, let's say in fairness, let's be fair.
Yeah.
Taekwondo has evolved to an as an Olympic sport that you have two styles of Taekwondo that actually are in the Olympics. And the Olympics were very initially open and accepted Taekwondo as the WTF, which is the World Taekwondo Federation. But you had simultaneously the ITF, which was the International Taekwondo Federation. And the International Taekwondo Federation, it was a lot like sport karate, like you would see sport karate, and until they started adapting the techniques of the doubles and spinning kicks and 360s and other kicks. And but there was a distinction between those two. But in order for ITF to compete in the Olympics as Taekwondo, they had to then graft themselves to WTF and become one entity in order to compete in the Olympics. And so the style of Taekwondo is kind of like what you see now, with a lot of controlled kicking, or kicking to the face, or hitting with sensors. And so it's become more of a game of, let's say, tag, because it's really about sensors, where you've taken out the element of forceful fighting or full contact fighting. And for whatever its reasons are, I haven't spoken to anyone that's really in charge of that to say what is or isn't their motives for changing and adapting to that way. And I don't compete in that. And my philosophy is, I did Taekwondo, and we evolved through Taekwondo. I left Taekwondo to do kickboxing for 10, 11 years, and then I went back to Taekwondo.
Okay.
And I was almost as successful as when I left, but I didn't fight the same way.
That's right.
The whole system of fighting had changed, and if I went back with the idea of, I'm going to fight like I did 10, 15 years, 12 years ago, I'm not going to win.
No.
So I had to learn how to use the experience that I gained as a fighter. How do I adapt that to what they're doing today? And what I did was I learned to do what they're doing today, and then I did what they were not doing.
That's right.
And then I added that, and that became, the signature of me as a fighter is I adapt to what my environment is, and I excel in it. And then
you look at today's a few minutes ago we spoke about the boys, the champions,
Right.
Like the Dan Richer and the Picard and everybody, the DeKalb brothers and whatnot. Who's the star these days in Taekwondo?
You can't say. I mean, when I went back to Taekwondo, it was in 96, 95, 96. And you had a pretty decent group of guys fighting, and they had been there. They had 10, 11 years to compete. And when I went back, a lot of people had heard of me, and being who I am, had some kind of
a world champion.
Yeah, had some kind of expectation.
Yeah.
And hopefully I exceeded their expectations. But and in coming back to that, like just kind of ties into what you're saying. I'm a known person going back to Taekwondo as opposed to who's really there in Taekwondo.
Yeah.
And that being said, it's like, I don't follow Taekwondo that intently because I have no really, fighters competing.
Yeah.
And I met some of the fighters that were at the top of their game when I competed again, and they were, great guys. Some of them I have a few stories with, and like Pascal Gentil from France, I was the smallest guy coming back, just by the way. I was the oldest and the smallest. These guys were all 6'5", 6'6", 6'7".
That's when you learn to fight giants.
That's when you learn to don't back up.
Don't back up. Yeah.
But some of them are great guys. Some of them are really, they had to. I think if I showed them anything aside from skill in fighting, I would hope that would be your, how you represent yourself after you fight, and when the fight's over and you're in the audience, and when you have people looking at you.
I've seen your kickboxing career.
Yes.
Okay.
Very much
And
so.
I used to do the television commentaries.
That's right. We have a little clip with you.
Yeah, the clip there, man. So I look at that, and I go back and I remember your debut in kickboxing.
Mm.
We're gonna move from Taekwondo to kickboxing, because I just mentioned that.
Yeah.
And I remember, of all the light heavyweight and heavyweight, the big boys, in the ring, I always said this. I said, if somebody's going to knock out somebody with the kick and hurt them real bad, is Darrell Henegan. You had that spinning hook kick,
Right.
round kick from
Spinning
behind.
back kick, yeah.
When every time you threw that, everybody at ringside would go, whoa,
Yeah.
And thank God you didn't clock anybody, because that pad on your well, you did hit
Yeah.
them, but if it was flush,
Yeah.
because with that half-inch pad
Yeah.
on your foot, the heel would have come in, and
Remember, there's on the bottom of the sole of that, there's no pad.
There's no pad.
It's just it's like a boot that covers the top and side of your foot. But
Yeah.
actually, on the bottom of the foot,
there's nothing.
there's nothing.
So you come in with that background, but you're not a punch.
Yeah,
And then
there's a story there.
kickboxing
Yeah.
goes to Montreal, early 80s.
Right.
Jean-Yves' first big kickboxing fight was opened up in Montreal against Jarvis Gardner.
Right.
And he knocked the guy out in 6th round, 7th round with the front leg round kick to the head.
Right.
Boom.
Right.
I jump in the ring, I grab him, and I say, kickboxing is born in Montreal. I mean,
Right.
Montreal's a hell of a fight town.
Right.
Quebec, they really like it. So you do a transition from Taekwondo to kickboxing.
Right.
Tell us about that.
So that year, it was about 84, I think, 85, 1984, 85. We had done. I was training with Jersey Long and Mario Cusson. I don't know if you
Good guys,
Michel Labonte, and those guys were training at Rialto Gym. And initially, I wasn't really into the kickboxing. I was, Taekwondo at heart, and I really just wanted to focus on that. And so that summer we were started boxing, and I would go and do some training with them. I always trained, so they would invite me to come and train with them. So I went and I knew how to fight. I always knew how to fight. I didn't know how to box because I never took any courses in boxing, but I knew how to punch.
And hard.
Yeah, and pretty hard. And but it was based and rooted in martial arts, so it wasn't necessary. But as a kid, you learn how to slap box and
that's
fool
right.
around, and you've been watching boxing on TV for the Muhammad Ali's and all those great champions that passed at that time. And you always imitated them and emulated them, and you played around. And so I went to the one sparring session and with Mario Cusson and the rest of them, and so we did about 4 rounds. And so the first 3 rounds I was great, couldn't touch me. I was moving around. Then he started to hit me. It wasn't so fun anymore.
No.
But that was that moment too where I realized I didn't know how to box.
That's right.
I didn't know. So the whole thing about, kickboxing. And so from that summer, we moved to go to the World Championships in Germany, Stuttgart. And so something happened politically, and then it wasn't really good. They didn't, and I hadn't really started kickboxing, but I was kind of flirting with the idea of it. And so through the training with those guys and doing losing that tournament, I think I finished 5th. I said, okay, I'm going to go to kickboxing. I'm not going to have this keep continuing. I was the best in the world at this time, and this shouldn't be happening. So I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to move forward now and still compete in, still be able to use Taekwondo, but compete in kickboxing. And then I started studying boxing, the art of boxing.
That's right.
As a fighter, not as it was real. It was how do I study what people are doing, why they do it, and that's what I did when going back to Taekwondo. Is I studied. I didn't just get out there and do it. So I started practicing. I started going to the gyms. I started going to the boxing.
And that sport has two words:
kickboxing,
boxing.
For sure.
Good for you, man.
Yeah. So I learned the art of boxing, and then I brought that as a part of my style. So, like you said, I wasn't afraid to kick. I didn't have one kind of like set of kicks. I could use a real arsenal of kicks and repertoire of quick kicks, and then I just became very efficient with the boxing.
Well, you know what? I've got the pleasure, I could say, to be there when kickboxing was born in Canada, but especially in Montreal.
Well, I would say, just not to really interrupt you, but I'd say, you are not just there, you are really quite instrumental in, managing and teaching and coaching Jean-Yves and promoting the kickboxing in itself, not just, here. And it's really through maybe, your vision and your character that really, helped to lay the foundations of what we know. Myself as a fighter, Jean-Yves as a fighter, and any great fighters that materialized really had a strong influence from your input.
Well, thank you so much.
We have to be very gracious for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those kind words coming from you. But you know what? We all grew up together, and I would go to Montreal, and I'd come back and I'd think about what happened. And we were lucky because most of the fights were televised.
Right.
So we were able to see. And I would sit there and take notes on fighters. And being French-Canadian, so I understood all the wording and everything else. And then we went there. For the people who don't know this, you're 15 times world kickboxing champion.
That's right.
That's a big record, brother. Yeah. That's a really, really big record.
Yeah.
When you talk about Ray Nickel, you went to boxing, studied boxing. Ray Nickel was your Taekwondo coach, but Ray Nickel was your mentor, was your cornerstone of your career.
Right.
Tell us about him, because he was a great man.
He was like I alluded to earlier, he was really responsible for helping me to become the fighter I am, and the fighter I am in the nature of somebody believing in you and in a capacity that you have to perform, and not just to perform, and not just as though it were a pretentious thing. There was no pretense about it. It is strictly this, and it is you're capable of doing this. And when I had my first that's a bit twofold, because Grandmaster Lee also has his influence, and I'll kind of transition into that. Ray had this ability to. It was my fight with Gerald Robbins. He's the president of the Taekwondo Hall of Fame, but he was a legend of his time. He was the Daniel Richer, Mike Warren of his time in the heavyweights. And he was the guy that I would have to beat to become Darrell, to become the passing of the mantle kind of thing. And we fought in New York, and he'd knock out his opponent, I'd fight mine. He'd knock out his, I'd fight mine. He'd knock out his, I'd knock out mine. So he knocked out like 3-4 guys before we actually got together to fight. And at that time, the callus on the toes would really, form really, how they get really hard, and it tore off. Oof. Tore off the big toe, and you could see the meat, the white of the,
yours,
of my toe.
Yeah.
So, Gerald Robbins' instructor had saw that it was pretty bad. So he comes and Ray and I are together, and he says, "Oh, that's pretty good, pretty bad. I don't think he's going to be able to fight."
Didn't want you to fight.
Yeah, he said, "I don't think he's going to be able to fight." So all of a sudden, Ray takes off, and I'm standing there like, where did he go? You know, and came back, told me the worst things you could say about Jerry Robbins. He told me that.
He got you going.
Got me going.
Yeah.
So he knew how to, incentivize me to
Mindset.
That's right. You know, don't lose this to this guy, and if you lose to this guy, you shouldn't fight anymore. Yeah, that's basically what he's saying. And it's one of the rare times that I did a fight, and I don't remember most of the fight. All I know is I wiped him.
That's good.
And that was the pivotal moment where, I became Darrell, this fighter, not just the Darrell you hear about or the Darrell he's fought a good
You
fight.
became the champ.
I became that
Yeah.
fighter that I was being honed to be since I was a green belt on Sherbrooke. And taking that a little further, Master Lee had a very good sense of how to make you maintain who you are, what you are, and what you are capable of doing all the time. At no point, and having that symbiotic relationship where, that if you're lacking in that, he just has to say one or two things, and that will bring you right back into it. But you have to obviously be able to do it, and respect the fact that he's capable of doing that with you.
That's right.
And so those are the two real influences that Ray and Master Lee had. Stan Nickel was my kickboxing coach. And the reason I got Stan, because Stan has this tenacity about him. This, the only thing I could liken it to is, those old westerns you used to watch, and you have True Grit, and like just that rough, grotty old guy, but gunslinger, and he has these set of these set of rules and these set of harsh realities, and he was that guy. He was that guy that, I don't care if your foot's falling off, get in there and finish what you had to do. And always remember who you are, and make them remember who you are when you leave this room. So the sense of that was what I really brought. I needed him for. We had that relationship, and when we went to kickboxing, that's
Stan brought that.
Stan brought that.
And I remember Jean-Yves fighting in the States, and the guy would call him Genevice Darrot. Couldn't pronounce his name.
Yeah.
And Jai was pounding him and say, "What's my name?" Boom, So I relate to that. But you had some great coaching, and you were surrounded by greatness, because Master Lee, Chung Lee, is a man. He was a good friend of mine, and he's the man that I always respected. But he was honorable, and he was polite, but he was smart, right? And he transferred that to the boys. Now you get your first big fight in Montreal. The place is packed. And this is the golden years of kickboxing. When you step in the ring and one of you is going to walk out, the other one not so sure, Who was that fight? Do you remember one of your first big fights?
My first fight was with a big wrestler named Yves Valancourt.
Yves Valancourt, wow.
Yeah, in Sherbrooke, actually.
Okay.
And it was like, maybe the ring was a little smaller than this.
No place to run, huh?
Discotheque with Real Marseille, and he's like maybe 6'4", wrestler type, big dude. He's 262 pounds.
I was there.
Yeah, I'm 185 pounds wet. and I lit him up like a Christmas tree, knocked him out, but my first fight in Verdun was with a football player named Dave Tedder, small guy. I kicked him. He went to the side of the room. It's one of these. The guy didn't throw one kick, and somehow he still did 4 rounds. So
yeah, you start to wonder.
You're wondering, like, what happened, JT?
Yeah.
And but my first fight, big fight, I was with a guy named Curtis Crandall.
From North or South Carolina.
Yeah,
Cowboy Crandall.
Curtis Crandall.
Good fighter too.
Yeah, he was a good
Experience.
fighter. He brought out the shoe shine in me, and I think that was my first real test, let's say. And after that, I fought with Jerry Rome twice.
Rome.
I fought
Big name.
once for the North American title in Atlanta.
His hometown, by the way.
His hometown with PKA, I think PKA or C at the time, and those guys, and it's like going into again, like the lion's den, and expecting to come out of there. I mean, I don't want to take anything from them. He got the decision that day. And we met again for the world title in Washington.
Different game?
Different game, different place. And I broke 3 of his ribs in that fight, and I won the title in that fight. That was my first big fight. Sorry, before that, it was Mad Dog Downey. I don't know if you...
Oh, yes, I remember
Dennis Mad Dog Downey in Philadelphia. I fought him, and I knocked him down about 12, 14 times. That was a interesting fight because you have a lot of pre-fight stuff and people say things, and you try to hype the fight. He said a lot of racially motivated things that kind of set me off, and it wasn't so much get in the guy's head and try to intimidate him. It was really, I'm gonna kill this guy. If they have to bring me out on a stretcher, I'm gonna kill this guy. And so we were walking, and in that theater, in that ring, the arena, it was like a theater setting. So you had to walk down. So you come in, and then you walk down to the stage where the ring was. So we're walking now to do our pre-fight interview, and nobody's turning. We're getting closer and closer, and then you hear the promoter go, "There's no money if you fight now," and everybody just turns and walks down to the ring. We did our thing, and he was the first real North American fight that I had.
That was good. You also fought, I remember, boy, was that a hell of a fight for you, a guy from France.
Oh yeah, Bruno Vuzuzzi.
Bruno Vuzuzzi, who was the big name in Europe, strong as a bull.
Oh yeah.
Boy, you did a number on him.
Yeah,
I think you retired him, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was actually you're right. That was, I think, Quebec versus France.
Yeah,
and it was a team fight we were doing. I think it was 7 rounds or 9 rounds, something like that.
Yeah,
and I remember that fight. This guy, even if he hits you at the end of the punch, it hurt.
Yeah.
And he'd punch, he'd make him miss, and then he'd just kind of make a lunge at you, and he'd catch you at the end of the punch. So I felt like, initially I was really doing well. I'm beating him. I didn't feel threatened by him. And then one part, I think it was the 3rd or 4th round, I heard the tap of the apron, and in my head I'll say, okay, I'm going to go back to the corner. And as I'm backing up to go to the corner, he clips me because the bell didn't sound.
Yeah.
He clips me just as the bell sounding right in the temple. And so I kind of wobble back to the ringside, and then you can see, I think it's on video, you see them giving me smelling salt and waking me up, and I think the next round I came back, I knocked him out.
You knocked him out. And I remember that. I brought that team from France for the Almacé.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, I need a good heavyweight. And I said, get Darrell in this fight.
Yeah.
It's perfect for him,
Yeah.
So that is good. So kickboxing has been a great move in your career.
Right.
A great
Tremendous move.
Yeah, and then that we talked about a breakthrough. Well, you mentioned a few of them, What's your best fight for you? It's not so much what I think as a spectator, but for Darrell Henegan, what established Darrell Henegan?
You mean In both the careers, or both Taekwondo and kickboxing? I mean, it's a very...
No, I think Taekwondo, you mentioned Robbins.
That's
So that would be the fight.
that,
okay?
but it's beating Korea actually that made the pinnacle moment. You know what
Okay.
I mean? So
Okay.
I had to face Korea in order to. I had to face Jerry Robbins in order to become Darrell. I had to face the Korean fighter in order to become world champion.
Okay.
And those two things really are pivotal in the necessity to become me as a fighter. I think kickboxing, it was a consistent challenge to meet the next challenge, to always kind of be better than the fight that I had before. And when I started beating guys like Jerry Rome, and Dennis Mad Dog Downey, Curtis Crandall, there was another guy called Larry Thunderfoot Curitin, and I fought him in Philadelphia. And he was like one of these, I don't know if you remember a fighter named John the Beast Mugabe. He was a middleweight fighter. He was knocking out everybody. This is the same kind of guy, classic guy. He just beat up everybody. He was just rough. He was like the George Foreman of the kickboxing in the States. Just heavy-handed, really strong guy. And he had his first 10 fights, he knocked everybody out the first round, second round. And
That's like a young Mike Tyson.
Yeah, the promoter at that time was Darrell. I like you, but I got my money on this guy. And those kind of things, are good because they incentivize me to be able to come on really strong. Not losing focus. Just now I become more focused. And he was a big fight, and I stopped him in the 10th round. So, I mean, there was a lot of moments, but the pinnacle moments would obviously be winning a world title. So winning the world title from Jerry Rome, and then Premestral Saleta, who was no pushover.
No pushover, but winning is one thing. It's difficult. Right. Keeping them and keep fighting, and it's tough. And back in those days, there were so many great fighters.
I mean, you have to. They have to understand. Well, this guy says, "Well, I'm a 2-category world champion. I have the FFKA title and the ISKA title, and where one might be more synonymous. Reputation wise, you still basically have the same fighters in each category.
It's the same.
It's not necessarily the title that makes it, it's the fighters that you had to fight to get to that title. And they say, well, you have 2 titles, how do you be 23 times and 15 times world champion? Well, you had to defend those titles.
That's right.
And it's not, so if I were to lose that title and win it again, then I'd be 2 times. And if I did that 15 times, well, I'd be 15 times.
That's right, exactly.
If I have 2 titles and I fight one guy, well, not 1 title is up, 2 titles are up. So if I lose both of them. So, the understanding of how do you become that, it's like everybody wants to take it.
Once you win and you become a world champion, after that, it's not a title, it's respect. And you want the people to remember you as the greatest you could be, as the things you left in the ring.
That's such a poignant thing you say. They say, someone once asked me, well, what do you want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered as one of the best fighters of my time.
Yeah.
I want to be remembered as a great fighter. I want to be remembered for the contributions that I've made to kickboxing and boxing and Taekwondo and boxing and martial arts. And in order for me to be remembered, that's why I didn't stop fighting after Taekwondo. I didn't stop fighting after kickboxing. I went back to Taekwondo. So my career really spanned from the 70s to the 2005. That's the length of my career. That's how long I was competing. And you're talking about a kid who started at 12, 13 years old, and I finished fighting at 43, 44 years old.
Been a beautiful ride.
Yeah, it's like that's an unusual thing, and that's
very
a
unusual.
rare thing. And
not too many fighters can go 30 years
Yeah,
like that, you know.
30, 40 years.
They can stay, but not to compete.
That's
you
right.
know?
And you said something earlier. Winning a title is one thing. It's a tremendous. Even winning a national title is something really incredible. I won 12 of them over 4 decades. That touched 4 decades.
It's brilliant.
So it didn't just do it all in one moment.
Yeah.
It was over a span of evolving Taekwondo. It wasn't like Taekwondo in the 70s. It's Taekwondo up till we are today.
It was not a lucky match.
No,
Yeah,
at
it's
all.
a lifetime, you
And
know.
kickboxing too. In order to keep your title, you have to beat the next guy, and that's what I said. I'm a little bit older than I look. That's because.
But I'm not going to tell them your age.
Yeah,
I promise.
all I did was train.
Yeah.
To be honest, I was that guy.
Yeah.
You know, all I did was I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't carouse. I didn't. I didn't have this wild ride of anything outside of the gym. I was really I've been with my wife Lorraine since I'm 13. We've been married since I'm 24. We have 2 beautiful sons and a grandson, and everything about my life was how to be a better fighter, and eventually a better person.
You are a better person. Yeah. I know that. But I got to touch on one little thing before we go to the finals.
Okay.
Tell us about the Darrell factor.
That's an acronym that we kind of came up with.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I like.
And we were kind of talking about it at one time, and I never had a pseudonym. I never had Darrell. John Yves the Iceman is it's an amicable pseudonym, and it represents him. I always wanted to be known as Darrell.
That's right.
I don't. What's your a nickname? No nickname. It's just Darrell. and so when we were thinking, we need you need some kind of representation, something that represents you as when somebody talks about you, and how do you lend your name or your slogan or your logo. And so we came up with the Darrell factor.
The Darrell factor. I got to mention a little story here.
Okay.
2018, we're in Greece.
Right.
We do our thing. We teach.
Right.
We train with people.
Right.
We socialize. We have a great time. I work all the time. It was awesome time. Then we took a holiday in one of the Greek resorts, 2 hours outside of Athens. Portoili.
Yeah.
That's right. And there's 22 of us. And one day you said, we're with the wives, and there was Greg Pollock, who's a strength coach.
Right.
There was you and Lorraine, and Greg with his wife Lorraine,
Right.
and
Sisters.
Terry Lynn and I, my wife. Right. And you said, Hanshi, I've got a great bottle of red wine, because I know you like good wine, and we're going to go out for dinner.
Right.
And this is when the Darrell factor, this is funny, it's so great.
How you see it coming.
We are sitting by the ocean.
Beautiful sunset.
Yeah, and beautiful sunset. And there's the street and the restaurants on the other side. And the owner shows up. And you said to the owner very politely, because that's the kind of person you are, you said, excuse me, sir, could you bring 6 wine glasses and a corkscrew? And you put the bottle on the table. And the guy left. It was the owner of the restaurant. And I said, Darrell, do you think he's just going to give you the corkscrew, not charge you anything, and the glasses? You said, yes. And I said, why? The Darrell factor, right? and then the guy said, well, and you look at him and you just said, anything wrong, sir? No, absolutely not. The Darrell factor. So we left him a good tip. So anyhow, it was good. Yeah. So in closing, I'm going to mention some certain things to you, and I want you to answer whatever way you want. Okay? First of all, advice for people watching this interview. There's so many good karate fighters, kickboxers, MMA in this world that will see this interview. Right. What's your best advice for them? They're young and they want to go your path.
So that might sound like a pretty easy question to answer, but it's going to take another hour to answer that question or give that statement. I look at it like this, for me, what I've done has always been a passion for what I've done. So the first thing is it's your passion. passion borderlines obsession. You know what I mean? It's not something that everyone can do, because if everyone can do it, then you'd have, you know, everyone can do it at their level, and the expectation of their level is what they're really doing it for. Instead of saying, hey, I want to aspire to become like Darrell or Jean-Yves or any of the other great fighters that they've known. I never aspired to be like anybody else. I never said, I want to be like that guy. I want to have the recognition that those people have, but I want to be me.
That's right.
I want to be known for me. I want to be known. I don't want to be, he fights like this guy, he fights like, no. This is who I am, and this is, ask anybody, how does Darrell fight? Like Darrell.
That's right.
So, you know, to answer that question, it would be, you know, in the sense of your passion. First is your passion and your drive and your desire to do whatever it is that you want to do, whether it be politics, sports, you know, school, work, whatever you're into, whatever you want to do, make that your passion. Life enters into that, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I have a family, I've had responsibilities, I've had commitments, I've had life, but my goal and my drive in life ran simultaneous to the rest of the things in life, and so I didn't, you know, I'd run from the gym to go take my sons to soccer, hockey, taekwondo, whatever I had to do, go back to the gym and go to work, go, you know what I mean? So I made the sacrifices necessary to do the things I want to do and compete at the levels that I wanted to compete at. So individually, you have to really decide, you know, what your passions are, and really understand the gravity of what it takes to get to where you want, and be realistic.
I think that's very good advice. Just in closing, you're a member of the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame.
Proud member.
Proud, most prestigious award in Canada for all martial arts.
Absolutely.
And I think there's about 120 in there, you know, inducted. There might be more. And you also received the Joe Louis Eternal Warrior Award.
Right.
One big
Which
one.
you did too.
Well,
And I'm the one that went and got them for you guys.
yes. And we got Joe Corley to come and
Yes,
present
and
it.
Brenton, yeah.
And I want to thank you for that. Not so much for me, but for the other guys that were there, like
Yes,
Jean-Yves and
Caesar.
Caesar and Alain and Harry Villeneuve, and
That's right.
a good
5
clan.
yeah.
Really, really good. For me, I'm just blessed being surrounded by greatness like you, you know, so it's great.
You definitely have
So,
your
my friend,
contribution.
I want to say thank you for all you did. Thank you for what you keep doing. And together, let's walk a few more miles over the next 20 years or so.
Absolutely. It was
Little
my
brother.
pleasure, big brother.
Yeah,
Absolutely
love you.
my
And
pleasure. Love you
let's
too.
make the next generation the best one.
Yes, the best thing they can be. Thank
Thank
you.